But hey, long time no speak, right?
Hey Samuel, it's good to see you and thanks for taking time for this interview.
Of course. It's good to see you too. It's been a long time.
How are you holding up in the COVID world?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm holding up. I mean, I'm doing all right. My family's okay. In terms of COVID, we're all healthy. No one has it. We've been social distancing properly, not doing anything too crazy. So we're doing all right. We're doing all right. How are you?
I'm also in college these days. I'm taking classes at NHTI, and I'm also interested in becoming a filmmaker.
Really? Okay, we got to connect on that one. That's interesting because I'm actually working on I have a screenplay class right now, and I'm working on a screenplay for that class. It was like the first act, the first 30 pages. Um, it's really fun. I'm not finished yet, but it's really fun getting this together. I love writing, and you know, I say that to say it's worth it. It's worth pursuing, and I don't know how far along you are in that journey, but I hope that you start soon and start getting out there with the camera and writing and whatnot. It's a lot of fun.
I use a communication device to communicate and have pre-programmed questions for the interview in advance. I can also speak, but it takes a lot of energy and it can be hard to understand me. Feel free to ask me to repeat myself if you do not understand me.
I will do. Appreciate it. I appreciate you letting me know.
Where did you grow up and go to school?
I grew up in, man, you know this. I grew up in Boscawen, New Hampshire, and then I started at St. John. Well, I started at St. John's, and then moved to the Merrimack Valley School District, like Boscawen Elementary, and then Merrimack Valley Middle School and High School around fourth grade, and then junior year I switched to Tilton School over in Tilton. So I kind of moved around a little bit. Even in preschool, I was at a different preschool, and halfway through kindergarten, I was at a different kindergarten in St. John's even. But I did jump around a little bit.
Before the kneeling controversy, did you ever feel singled out as a person of color? And if so, can you give an example or two?
Almost definitely. It's yeah, I could give you an example. It was difficult, especially I had an older cousin who was, for example, great at basketball and track and football. He kind of excelled at all the sports that he did naturally, and it didn't come to me as easily. So part of it was just having him as a relative who also came through the school district, and having like my mom and my uncles who were like major athletes back when they were younger too. They came through and they were just naturally talented, and it didn't come to me so easily with all the same sports. Like basketball, I wasn't, I didn't excel at basketball the same way that all of them did. And track, I love track. I wasn't the greatest. I wasn't as good as them, but I was okay at track. That was kind of my sport. But when you have these family members, and more specifically when you're the only black athlete on a certain team, you're kind of expected to, overachieve or do much better. You can't be like a regular athlete. You have to go above and beyond. Otherwise, to them, you're not good. And I guess another example um, would kind of be well, I guess before the kneeling as well. If you in New England, specifically in New Hampshire, are black and you do something good, they kind of treat you like Jackie Robinson a little bit. It's like a big deal that you're doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? And they don't need to people don't need to make such a big deal out of something so regular, so small. If I'm just preaching the truth, I'm just preaching the truth. It's not like I'm the first person to do it, just because I'm the only one on the scene at the moment that's Black saying what I'm saying. So I guess those would be the two examples. But to answer your question, most definitely, I felt singled out.
What was the driving force for your decision to kneel during the national anthem at a Merrimack Valley football game?
It really was just all the brutality, the police brutality that was going on around me. I felt like I had been seeing a lot, and I had heard a lot since I was a kid. I've heard so many stories from my mom and my grandmother, so I know it's real. I mean, I see it on the news, so I know it's real. But like when you hear it from your family, you get a different feeling. And my grandmother grew up during like segregation era, for real. She watched Brown versus Board of Education. She was alive for that. There's things that they've told me that I would not like to repeat on camera, but are just absolute horror stories. And when I see it on the news, I get a different type of feeling. I have a certain connection to it. So I guess I would say a combination of those two things made me want to bring awareness to what was going on around the country, specifically most importantly, the police brutality that had been shown on the news. 2015 was one of the worst years for police killing unarmed Black men and women. It was, it was mad, and it made me emotional. When I was 12, the world heard about Trayvon Martin's name, along with myself, and that always, that I connected to him, and for some reason, and I grew up with that. In a lot of ways, it was like Emmett Till, for like my grandmother, like children that grew up in the 50s and 60s. It was sort of the same deal. So, of course, Trayvon Martin was sort of like the beginning, but I would say 2015 was definitely the catalyst. And then once I saw Colin Kaepernick do it, it made me feel like, okay, this is something I can do this. You know what I mean? He's raising awareness. I can do this exact same thing. It's such a, single-minded area living in. I wanted to, just make people aware. I guess that would be the driving force, if anything.
After you knelt during the national anthem, what did you experience from the school and community in response?
I mean, typical backlash. I got a few threats. I got some threats, and I remember somebody had shot a BB gun bullet through my grandmother's windshield, and that was when we had decided to switch schools. But it was typical backlash. Most of it was just people calling me names or people telling me that I'm wrong and this and that, or I should find a new way to do it, and blah 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 blah. When you start drawing attention towards these things, people like to. It's not even drawing attention. It's more just speaking up. Once you speak up and out, people like to try and micromanage you or just manage you and tell you how you should do it if they don't like it, or if it challenges them or contests their daily way of life and interrupts their blissful ignorance. Someone's gonna try and tell you how to do it, and thankfully myself and my family kind of ignored that.
Were you supported by your teammates and friends after the backlash?
Actually, yeah. So for the most part, my teammates and all of my friends, and I was actually I was proud of them, and I was proud of myself as well, because growing up I was told like you have to surround yourself around the right company, because when push comes to shove, if push comes to shove, you're gonna need it. And in this case, I made myself familiar with really cool people. I was just reflecting on this the other day, how intelligent some, I have most of my friends are from when I was 11 or 12, like at middle school and in high school is when I got that friend group together, and I'm still in contact with a lot of them. And a lot of the people that I would hang out with were extremely supportive of me after I had done this. And more recently, they've been more vocal about their support. But back then, there was, no doubt that my friends they had my back, and my teammates, um, maybe not as much as I would have liked for them to, but they also had a good amount of support for me. They had my back if something were to go down.
Were you supported by your teachers or administrators?
That's a difficult question because a lot of them aren't really allowed to be vocal with that. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The teachers that were vocal, it was noted. I haven't really been back to Merrimack Valley since, so I never got too many opportunities to thank some of the people that, let me know that what I was doing was right or had my back one way or another. And again, I'm sure they were told they couldn't say anything about it in class, but I could tell the teachers that were really for me, and to the teachers that weren't, I don't know. But there were some supportive teachers.
What was the last straw that led you to leave MV, and where did you go?
It was the catalyst was definitely when the BB bullet was shot through my grandmother's car, because leading up to that point, my family had kind of been pushing me to, move schools, and I wanted to wait it out for the year. I definitely planned on leaving by the end of that year, but I wanted to wait it out because I didn't want to come off as, I don't know, maybe weak. I was like 16. I was 16 when this happened, so I had a lot of pride. And then once that happened, I realized, okay, this is clearly, there's a message. There's something being said to me that's making me not feel welcome, and more importantly, it's making my family uh, not feel safe, along with myself. Not that we ever had, from the get go, but this definitely felt like the catalyst. So I'd left and I moved to Tilton School, which was, 15 minutes in the other direction, and they embraced me with open arms. It was nice, very nice school.
What were some of the differences that you noticed after leaving MV and starting at a new school?
Well, some of the, I mean, by default, Tilton is a boarding school, so they, have a smaller population. We had, MV had like 2 to 3,000 kids, and Tilton had, like 250 to 300. So I guess just inherently a more social and aware community at Tilton than there was at Merrimack Valley, because I've spoken to, well, I was speaking to students around that time from Merrimack Valley right before I had left that still had no idea that I had even taken a knee. And I guess that kind of goes to show the size of the school, and also the level of awareness. And I think a lot more people at Merrimack Valley were in their own bubble as opposed to Tilton. That felt like when I went, it really did feel like a family. And it felt like because I wore the school colors, they would have my back, which wasn't it. I had not been used to that in any way, leading up to that point, with the exception of my own family. But I hadn't experienced any support like that, because the teachers were just as vocal about how supportive they were of me as the students were, which I think was a big difference as well.
How did you choose where to go to college, and what has college been like for you?
That's a good question. Morehouse, well, Morehouse is a HBCU. It's a historically black college or university, and it's also all male. So I'm going to school with, like 3 to 5 thousand other black men, and we have a sister school right next door, and it's Spelman College, and it's all women's, and then we have a university right next door in Clark Atlanta University, and they have men and women, and we call ourselves the AUC, the Atlanta University Center, just to give some insight into my area. But I chose Morehouse because that felt like a community that I'd been longing for. I grew up again in rural New Hampshire, little Bosquen. We have like 10 people in our town, and half of them are my family. Um, that's an exaggeration, but I did grow up in a very small town, and there's not much diversity here. I never really got to see anybody else black, and in my area or in New Hampshire until I was like, man, like 11 or something like that. Actually interacting with someone else black. I was much older and outside of family, I mean, and uh, it just felt like long overdue being in a community such as Morehouse. I never had, because I know now that I'm at Morehouse, I know students that were going to predominantly black high schools, and that just sounds insane to me because I never even pictured that. Uh, so it felt like Morehouse was familiar. It felt like Morehouse could have been familiar at least, and that was a driving force in my decision, was to be around somebody who, someone else who got it. And I will say the difference between Morehouse and any other, predominantly white university or institution is that when you're the only black student or just a black student at these white institutions, what happens is when you meet someone else, particularly someone who's white, step one is ignoring the fact that I'm black, which is that's the sad truth, So if I went to UNH or if I went to, any other, yeah, NHTI, any predominantly white institution, that would kind of be a barrier in some ways because there's a lot to navigate that I wish wasn't the case, but is the truth. There is a lot to navigate with, me just looking a little bit different. But at Morehouse, we're all black. So, step one's gone. I'm comfortable, I'm familiar. We've all been through the experiences. We get it. And at Morehouse, there's still diversity because it's different lives. I grew up in New Hampshire. I'm the only one. I think I'm the first one to go to Morehouse that was born and raised in New Hampshire, and that's a conversation in itself because you have students from Chicago, you have students from Atlanta, you have students from occasionally Boston, students from California, students from all over the place. But I get the opportunity to meet them. Sorry if you hear my dog barking. I get the opportunity to meet them and hear their stories and share mine.
What are you studying in college?
So it's called Cinema, Television, and Emerging Media Studies, which is a glorified way of saying I'm a film major. So I'm studying film. It's one thing we have in common. I believe I plan on double majoring in film and international studies, and then maybe minoring in French, but we'll see about that one. But film above all else.
Did your experiences at MV influence your decision on what you wanted to study in college and then do for work after college?
I would say less about what may have happened at Merrimack Valley and more just what was happening while I was at Merrimack Valley. I started acting when I was 6 years old. I was acting and modeling, and that's kind of how I got interested in that realm. Um, and up until I was like 17 or 18, I thought that I was going to be acting. And then when I was at Tilton, fast forward, I took a film class with Jason Harrington. We still keep in touch. He's a really cool guy, and he taught me a lot about filmmaking. And he's not there anymore, but I am so grateful to him, whether he knows it or not, because there was so much that I took away from that class, techniques. That's when I started watching movies again. So I would say it started when I was, about 6, and I stopped acting when I was, yeah, about 14, 15, and then kind of had a blank period. And then I went to Tilton, and they had a new plethora of classes. It was all new, and I was drawn to like photography and filmmaking with him, and that's when I started to realize, okay, maybe this is my passion. I'm going to try and do this on the side when I get to school, when I get to college, and I'll focus on like political science or whatever it may be, just as like a cover. And because being a film major sounded ridiculous to me at that point. And then I got to college, and between my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college, I'd watched so many movies that summer, and I felt like I had a new knowledge. In my first semester, I was like a sociology major, and then my second semester, I moved to, I think, political science. And then one day I was reading. I'm sorry if I'm dragging this on, but one day I was reading "Nobody Knows My Name" by James Baldwin, and he's my favorite writer. And part of it is because of this. I was reading it, and early on in the book, he started talking about his passion as a writer and what it took to write and what it took to accept that he was a writer, and what led up to those moments. He started off as a preacher and eventually figured out he was a writer. And when I read that, it felt like I, you know, struck oil. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to write and direct. So I guess that was the moment that I realized I wanted to be a film major. I wouldn't really uh, credit Merrimack Valley. I'd say if anything, Tilton helped me, figure that one out. But ultimately, it was my own experiences. Oh, I actually have his book right back here. That's funny. And then that little movie tray right back there. That was essentially my senior and freshman year, my senior year of high school, freshman year of college. But those ones right there would help me figure out I wanted to get in the film.
What do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement and its impact on sports today?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's great. Uh, I think that we have, and I'm familiar with some of the members in different like New Hampshire chapters, like Black Lives Matter, Manchester and Nashua. Um, and I know them personally, and I know that they're doing very hard and uh, dignifying work. It's not easy what they're doing, and it takes a lot, because they also get a plethora of threats and backlash, just for fighting for their own rights, and the rights of other people, and it is very honorable. I think it's a great movement, and I love the impact that it has on sports. And I love hearing people say, "Leave politics out of it," because that's how I know we're kind of moving forward with. Well, maybe not moving forward, but you know, we're headed in the right direction. I think when uh, it becomes such a powerful conversation, and I think it's great that someone like LeBron James was so impacted by Black Lives Matter and everything else that was going on in the country, in the world, that had been brought to his attention by Black Lives Matters. You know, most of what's been going on has been brought to our attention by the movement. And it inspired him so much that he picked up the autobiography of Malcolm X. He picked up his book, and you know, I don't know if he's finished, but he's been reading it. He's, you know, educating himself, and it was really nice seeing him, you know, post game interviews with the book in his hand, and you could see his progress as he went along. The bookmark kept moving and moving and moving, and that's real. That's real. That's I I don't even know how to explain it. That's like you're watching somebody educate themselves. You're watching LeBron's almost 40, and he's the greatest NBA player. What does he need to know? Clearly, some more. You know what I mean? He's as humble as he is. He's willing to admit that he doesn't know everything, and more importantly, there's more to learn to, you know, help our cause, help our movement. So and he won the championship, so that helps a lot. Uh, so him specifically, it was nice to see his growth. Of course, it doesn't impact everyone the same. So not every NBA player or not every NFL player, MLB, they're not all gonna go pick up Malcolm X's book, and some of them have already read it. But it was nice to see, you know, uh, walk-offs or postponing a game because they wanted to bring awareness to what was going on around the country. It was nice that they were contributing.
What do you think about professional and college athletes speaking out against police brutality, and how will that impact sports moving forward?
I think it's great. I'm glad that this is the direction we're heading in. At the same time, I have to be honest, I don't think we should confuse athletes as uh, politicians, as scholars every single time. I don't believe that we should confuse athletes with, you know, real critics. I think that there's a couple that I'm aware of that say what they need to say and say it very well. I think Chris Paul would be a good current example of somebody who should and can speak out what. Oh, you like Chris Paul? I think he's a good example of someone who should, you know, stand up and speak out, or does a good job at, I should say, standing up and speaking out, not should. At the same time, I feel like there is a designated lane, and it's not that they can't step out of their lane with sports, but it gets a little difficult once we start idolizing celebrities and letting them, you know, speak for us when we're the ones who should be speaking for us. Like as opposed to having a writer get up about what's going on around the world. You know what I mean? Um, at the same time, I do really appreciate the athletes, you know, getting up and doing what they're doing.
Do you think sports can play a role in preventing people of color from dying of violence in our country?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think so. I think any awareness brought to what's going on is awareness. You know what I mean?
What are you doing to help promote awareness around racial justice? Have you gone to protests surrounding police brutality and racial justice?
I have. I will say it's much less about what I've been doing over the past what is it, like 4 months? Whenever August came, because I'm not built the same way that, you know, someone like Jordan Thompson might be, who's uh, a very prominent voice around New Hampshire and you know, part of the Black Lives Matter movement. Um, he is doing great work, and everyone around him is doing great work. Um, so I did attend, and I think I hosted one or two protests this past summer. I did what I could to get the word out. And since then, I haven't been as active on social media. I haven't been as, you know, active in the public with stuff like this. I've really been focused on school, and it's mainly because I look and see the work that they're doing, and I feel a lot more comfortable knowing that there's people uh, who in some ways are like meant to do this. I don't see myself as that person. As much as I'd like to help, I'll lend a hand whenever wherever I can, but that is them. I'm trying to pass these classes right now.
Have you ever been a victim of police brutality or racial profiling?
Well, there's a big leap between the two. Police brutality, no. I no. I think I've been racially profiled by a cop, and I know for a fact I've been racially profiled by other people. You can't really escape it, even in a town where everyone knows my name. They still might follow me around the store, the Dollar General or something like that, the Cumberland Farms. Um, so yes, and to answer your question, yes, it really is difficult to escape when you just look different, you know.
Where do you currently live? And do you see racial injustice or discrimination in your community?
So I'm moving back and forth between Bosquen and Atlanta, and big difference between the two. I can tell you that. Bosquen, I haven't been as in touch. I don't, I'm not out in the community all the time. I don't really walk around. It's usually I'm driving. Uh, in my experience, most recently, no. That that's not to say it wouldn't exist if there were more black people. I think the big issue is that there aren't any black people in this community, and I don't know if I would call it an issue, but it's definitely, you know, it's pretty obvious that we're a pretty white town. So I have to say no, uh, but that's not to say that people don't have things to say, behind closed doors, because majority of the time they do. As for Atlanta, yes, and it's unfortunate because Atlanta has one of, if not the highest population of black people in the city. Um, in a lot of ways, it's our city. You know what I mean? We dominate that city. We dominate the culture. We dominate the food, the curriculum. Medical field. So many black doctors down in Atlanta, and yet, the two students at my school got tased in the car because they were past curfew. I mean, I was there when that happened. I believe. Um, I didn't even realize there was a curfew. And I will say I saw firsthand plenty of people breaking it if there was. But of course, these two students, I believe they were uh, students at Clark Atlanta University. Maybe one of them was from Morehouse. Maybe the guy. But regardless, they were from the AUC, the Atlanta University Center, and they got tased for being out a little bit too late. They got pulled out of their cars too. Um, and granted, this was in like June or July, but it's not like it just disappeared after that. Like it went on the news, and then everyone realized, oh, Atlanta's a little bit racist, and then they said, let's stop doing this. It didn't go away. So to answer your question, yes to Atlanta. Uh, Possibly yes to Bosquen. Nothing that I'm fully aware of, but in surrounding communities, most definitely.
Have you played any sports since MV? And if so, have you continued to take a knee during the national anthem?
Not. It was different when I got to Tilton because I kept playing football, and I went to Tilton on scholarship with football, and they didn't play the national anthem before the games for the reasons that some of the reasons that I took a knee, because with the national anthem, first of all, we had other students. We had students from Asia and we had students from Africa, different continents that would, their anthems are different. So just out of respect, that was part of it. They wouldn't play it because America isn't the sole focus at our school. Um, and on top of that, it also, from what I was told, it also, would raise mixed feelings for someone like me, uh, who doesn't have the same experience with that anthem and with what the anthem stands for as a lot of other people do, in this country. So no, but I did play sports. I played football. I played tennis. I played baseball for a year, tennis for a year, and I didn't kneel just because they didn't have the anthem. Otherwise, I would have, if that's what you're wondering.
What is your hope for the new Biden administration? And do you think Biden will be a strong supporter of racial justice?
I'll be frank. I don't think so. Uh, I think there's going to be some empty promises, but I will say, with the president, you want to hope. Um, I don't want to. I really don't want to get up here and lie. I I'm not extremely hopeful. Nor was he my first choice. Of course, it wasn't Trump, but you know, um, I don't think so. What I do hope to see, what I really would love to see is reparations. Um, I would love to see them. That's a good question. I would love to see them absolving any past crimes for specifically black men who aren't serving like 60 years to life for an itty bitty ounce of marijuana. I would love to see that absolved because that is ridiculous and extremely unfair, especially considering there's white people making a life off of dispensaries now. In Vermont, in California, it doesn't matter where. That's a career choice now. And at the same time, there's black people who are, being they're in prison, and it's just not fair. So between reparations and that, I think those are two very big hopes of mine. I would love to see. I would love to see uh, the police, defunding the police and working towards abolishing the police. I think that people get confused with defund and abolish. I am a full supporter of abolishing, and I say that because it's a power structure. The police system isn't something that can just be stripped of the funds. You know what I mean? You can't take the funds away because it's a mentality. They have a flag. Blue Lives Matter. They have a slogan. You can't just get rid of that. You can't take money away and then that just goes away. You know what I mean? The Klan has been around for how many years, and that shouldn't exist at all. I think that it would be good if we got rid of that system and replaced it with more communal, more personal systems that dedicated themselves to specific areas in a community. I think that a weapon should not be involved. I think that the the new system or systems, whatever we, are to create later on, I think it would be great if we set it up so that it was more difficult for people to corrupt it. Because once it gets corrupted, mm, who knows? Could end up like the police system again or like the Klan. So I think it would be great to have, some sort of test or some sort of background check or I'm not a professional. I don't know, but I would love to see that. I would love to see more personal, more communal, um, a more personal and communal structure.
Thanks so much for taking time for the interview, Samuel. Do you have a photo of yourself we could use for the story? Maybe
Yeah,
at a Black Lives Matter protest, or at college.
yeah, I do. That first of all, thank you for having me. It's really good to see you.
Yeah.
Great, you look great. I have a photo. Um, I'd give you one from the protest, but I'm pretty sure I'm crying in every photo, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass on that. But I'll give you some college photos, and I guess I'll give you like 3 or 4 if you want.
Yeah,
I will let you know when the interview and video gets published.
Awesome.
Thanks again.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and happy to speak with you. Good luck in future endeavors, and please keep me posted on your filmmaking, and let me know when you put something together.